My name is Wolfie Miller with MSD. I'm the project manager for the Clifton Heights CSO Storage Basin project, which we're here to talk to you about tonight. I would like to mention that this is the third meeting that we've been out to talk about this project. We were out to talk about an orientation of this on March 2014. We came back to this location on May 19th of this year to give a conceptual design where we gathered some input from the audience. We gave a little bit of background about the consent decree. We talked about how this project is going to address the requirements of the consent decree, and then we gathered some preferences. So obviously we're back to talk to you tonight. We have some more opportunities for you to provide input. And then we're going to take some questions. If you have any additional comments above and beyond this, we'll have comment cards that you can fill out. If we'll collect those at the end of the meeting, I can read those up here so that they're actually part of the record at the end of the day. If you missed either one of the meetings before for this project or would like information about any of MSD's projects, you can go to MSD's Project Win website. That's msdprojectwin.org. And where the red circle is on the top right, it's the Public Input tab where you can go and get these presentations in PDF and also videos of them. Additionally, we will have an online survey available for anybody to go to, which is the red URL at the bottom, and that'll be available within about a week, and that'll be based on sort of the things we talked about today, where people that were not able to come can still have an opinion, or can still voice their opinion. So this is the advanced design meeting, the third meeting out of 4. Tonight we'll be asking for input in part based on the background that we've talked through tonight, as well as some of the information we've presented before. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take your input, we're going to go back to the office, use what you have provided us as preferences to make some decisions and move forward with the project. So for our agenda tonight, we'll give another brief background about the consent decree. We're going to gather some demographic information, give you an update on the process and talk about what we gathered from last time, present a couple more options to you, gather your opinions on those options, and then we're going to, like I said, collect some comment cards at the end if anybody has any. So for a consent decree background, as a driver of all this, of all these major projects, you'll notice that most of the time the water quality in our creeks and streams in the community are good and they're safe for different types of activity. But what you may not know, however, is that when it's raining heavily, the sanitary sewer pipes actually fill up with rainwater and overflow into the creeks and streams and causing problems like this. Untreated sewage and trash kind of gets out into the creeks and streams, and it happens along both our internal streams and also the Ohio River. This is more prevalent in a combined sewer system where both sanitary water is conveyed during dry weather and also stormwater during wet weather. They actually get to be too much for the capacity of the pipe, and there were overflows that were constructed at the time in order to relieve the system. So as you can see, the blue at the bottom is still going to go to the treatment plant and be treated, but like anything excess of what that capacity is will overflow to the creek. So here's a map of the county, and what you'll notice is all the blue dots in the shaded area is the combined sewer system. Those are combined sewer overflows, and that's generally bounded by the Waterston Expressway. But all the green dots you see are actually sanitary sewer overflows. So that's where rainwater's getting into the separate sanitary sewer system where it's not supposed to, and those are all overflow locations. So MSD has projects to address all of those. MSD began discussions with the EPA and the state of Kentucky in 2003 to address the situation. In 2005, we entered into a court order, and we were required to develop and submit a plan to address all of those dots. The plan was developed with input from the community and submitted in 2008 and approved in 2009. This plan requires that we work on the combined sewer system, like I said, everything inside the Waterston, completed by 2020, and the separate sewer system completed by 2024. So this is a map of some of the largest, these gray basins and green infrastructure projects going on in the city. As you can see, this really isn't an isolated issue. So there are similar projects to this going on across the community. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and get some demographic information from you using the clickers that we just handed out. The clickers are The clickers are pretty easy to use. We'll have some options up on the screen. You press the number that corresponds to the option that you would like to provide input on. The process is instantaneous, so we'll be able to see the results that you provide. It's anonymous, so if you choose to provide input for some and not others, if you fib a little bit, we really won't know, and nobody can hold you accountable for that. And also, like I said, I'd like to plug again that if anybody that you know was unable to attend this meeting, the opinions that we expressed today will be kind of built into an online survey that will be available for them to also provide input to. So the first question that we'd like to ask is how young are you? So like I said, just take your clicker, press the number that corresponds to the age group that we've provided. If you see a green light flash on your clicker, then we know the computer's listening to you. If there's an orange or a red flash, then let us know and we'll get you a different clicker. Okay, I think everybody's probably been in there. So we can see. So this is an example. Yeah. So a lot of fresh faces in here. So I'm assuming that you guys are just lying on your age. So we'd also like to ask if you could specify your gender if you would like. So it looks like we have a pretty split or pretty uniform audience. We'd also like to ask you, we're going to use this map to ask you what part of town you live in, what part of town you work in or operate a business in, and then also if you have any, what part of town you play in, if you have any other activities to bring in here. So on this map, areas 5, 2, 1, and 3 are all bounded on the west by Melwood Avenue. Brownsville Road splits the difference between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 3, I believe, is Clifton Heights. Right, the basin location we're going to talk about, I know some of you were here before, that's about the location number 1. Right now we are at about the number 2 on the screen. Bingham Park is going to split between 2 and 4. WLKY is about the difference between 1 and 3.
So we can make 2 choices, one
We're,
where we live and one where we recreate.
I just want to sort of orient you with this map, and then we're going to ask you those questions specifically. So if you press your button, it's okay. The computer's not listening until we tell it to. So if we can go through that. So what part of town do you live in? So area 1 is going to be north of Brownsville Road and Kenilworth area, and area 2 is going to be west of Bingham Park, east of Melwood. Well, I take that back. So this is the map again. There's no active question, but we'll notice that most of the people live right around the project area. So that's good. We appreciate you guys coming tonight. Yeah. So Height Avenue is about the boundary between 3 and 7. So this is the same map we showed before, but if you have a specific question, I might be able to walk you through it. All right. So we're going to ask, where do you spend your days now? So if there's up to the, you can press up to 3, and it'll remember the last 3 that you select. Crescent Hill and Frankfurt Avenue is going to be area 8, I believe.
Can you back up to the map for a second? Okay, Barbara, where do you like to walk?
Okay. So now it'll listen. Okay, let's see. Oh, so we're sort of all over the place except for Area 5. So Area 5 is sort of south of Brownsboro by the railroad tracks. So now, the same map again, just in case anybody has any further questions. But we're going to ask if you operate a business, if you own a business, if it's in one of these areas. If you don't own a business, you can press number 10, or you can abstain from answering if you would like. Okay, so most people don't operate a business, but the ones there are a few that are here tonight, so we appreciate you coming. We'd like to know how you heard about this meeting. So MSD has a few ways of getting the word out for these kind of meetings. You don't see the answer? So at first I'd like to ask if everybody can read this. Obviously, the more we have, the text is small, so if anybody can't read this, I can read it out loud. We have 1 would be a postcard, 2 would be saw it in the Courier Journal, 3 would be saw it in the Metro Council District newsletter, 4 could be heard about it from a neighborhood association, 5 would be heard about it from someone else, 6 receive a flyer, 7 Project Win website, 8 would be MSD email, or 9 could be another option. Okay. All right, so most people heard about it from neighborhood association. So our communication with the Clifton Heights Community Council has been successful. So now we'd like to ask what your primary sources of information for MSD projects in general are. So not necessarily this meeting, but where you typically look or what's reached out to you to give you information on MSD projects. So 1, public meetings, 2, Metro TV videos, 3, Project Win website, 4, local, mainstream, or print broadcast media, 5, social media, 6, MSD email, 7, Metro Council District newsletter, 8, bill inserts, or 9 would be you're here for the first time, maybe somebody dragged you along, and you don't have any other information about MSD projects in general. So Metro Council District newsletter. So thank you, Councilman Hollander. And the next question is, how would you like to learn about MSD projects? So we're trying to branch out and obviously get the word out as much as possible. If there's one of these items that's most convenient for you that MSD is really lacking in getting information out, then let us know. And you can select up to 3 of these as well. And these should be the same options as before, except you don't have an option to not want MSD information. Most people want to hear about it in the council district newsletters. Okay. So we're going to use this information to get information out to the public better. So now we're going to give an update on the design process and talk about what information that we discussed last time with your input. So this is the same map showing the large basin and the large green infrastructure projects in the area. The Clifton Basin is highlighted by the red circle in the top right corner. So that's where we are this evening. We've been calling it Clifton Heights. I will do my best to remember that. Just as a frame of reference, the CSOs that we're addressing are in the sewer shed that's bounded by this yellow line, and it's kind of hard to see, but just in general, it goes east all the way into Indian Hills, southeast into Crescent Hill. You can actually see the water treatment plant there. It goes all the way up to the river, obviously, so it's a very big area that drains here. So right now, what happens when it rains is that the sewers overflow at these blue dots, 2 on the right side of the page and 1 on the left side. They follow the red line and go out to the creek, and that's where the overflow goes, is out to a tributary of Beargrass Creek. What we hope to do is with this project, we're going to divert the flow that's in those overflow pipes using the yellow lines as alignments and go to the basin that's the big yellow square. The basin itself is going to be about the size of a football field in surface area. The basin is going to be 7 million gallons in size. That's the volume of overflow that it can hold. And we're going to reduce the number of overflows and the volume of overflows in a typical year. Basins, speaking in generality, all of the storage for these basins is going to be below the existing sewer, below ground. The sewers are obviously buried, so all the storage is going to be below that. So it's fed by gravity. It's going to hold the sewer overflow temporarily, or we can release it back into the system once the system has relieved itself a little bit when there's capacity for full treatment, and then we're going to rinse the basin so that it's clean for next time we need to use it in a heavy rain event. So this project we're looking at, like I said, this is the same map before with the yellow rectangle. It's in a low area off of Drescher Bridge Avenue, sort of behind the homes at Front Brownsboro Road, and in a low spot behind Melwood Arts Center. It's currently owned by the city. There's not vehicular access to the area. Birdie Avenue up by Melwood Art Center is closed off to traffic, and Muncie Avenue is closed off near the condominiums down there. The site's relatively remote, and trees line the properties that front Brownsboro to the south, and there's that rock bluff to the north. And what people may not know is that this area is actually in the floodplain of the Ohio River. Drescher Bridge Avenue is actually part of the levee system that protects us from flood events of the river. So now we'd like to talk about what we presented to you last time and what kind of feedback you gave us. So we presented 3 concepts for what the basin would look like above when we're done. Concept number 1 was above ground, so everything, the top of the basin was actually potentially raised to above the 100-year floodplain of the Ohio River. Concept number 2 is partially above ground. Some access points to some of the mechanical equipment would be constructed above the floodplain, but everything else was at ground level. And concept number 3 was the access points I discussed were at ground level, and everything else is actually going to be buried below ground. So each one of these serves the same purpose, it has the same function, but each one had its pros and cons. So this is a rendering of what we presented as concept number 1 for above ground. Like I said, the basin roof sticks up out of the ground quite a bit just to be above the floodplain of the Ohio River. And it turns out you didn't really think much of this idea. So we're rated on as a scale of suitability from very unsuitable to suitable. We're on the lower end of that. So concept number 2, partially above ground. Like I said, some access points would be constructed above the floodplain, but everything else would be at grade. We're getting a little bit better, but we still didn't really think much about that option. So concept number 3 was mostly below ground, access points constructed at grade so we can still access them when we need to, but everything else would be below ground. And this option was clearly preferred by our audience and our online polling. So with that in mind, we decided to move forward with concept number 3. So that's our starting point for discussion tonight. In addition to getting your input on those concepts, we also asked you to speak up and give us some things that were important to you for us to consider as we move forward. Some of the key items that people voted for were we'd like the site to be visually aesthetic. Keep in mind that it needs to fit in. It should be environmentally friendly, which is at the basis of all of our projects. The surface should be usable, which we took to mean that it was mostly flat and smooth to where it's not rough terrain that's inaccessible. And also cost is important, and we like that you voted for that because cost is important to us as well. So now we're going to present a couple more design options to you with us keeping all of that information in mind. We're moving forward a little bit. We're here tonight to talk about fencing, so screening and appearance options of any potential fencing, and security and access of the basin area. What access should there be? So much of the basin area is going to be screened by existing trees to the south, the ones that are going to be between our project and the houses that front Brownsboro Road, and to the north is going to be that rock bluff, like I said, which we won't be impacting. A portion of the site is going to be visible from Drescher Bridge. Unfortunately, with the steep elevation of Drescher Bridge, overlooking part of the site is going to be a real possibility no matter what option we select here, because it's going to be looking down on the project. So as far as our options that we're going to talk about tonight, we could potentially put a chain link fence with or without some sort of green screening, green meaning like bushes or shrubs, some sort of decorative metal fence, or potentially no fencing. So option number 1 that we'd like some input on is a chain link fence, and this is a rendering from the corner of, it's a little bit up in the air, but the corner of Brownsville Road and Drescher Bridge, so it's looking, the white that you see back there is going to be Melwood Art Center. So this would be, you're not particularly close to it, so you won't be able to see the chain link in great detail, but you're going to be able to see some chain link down there. And for those of you who have forgotten what chain link looks like, here's a couple options of a chain link fence. And these are things that I was able to find online, so it's not an MSD facility that you can go make fun of. So option number 2 that we'd like to talk about is chain link fence with some sort of green screening. We're kind of limited on what we can plant around the basin, particularly on the site that is going to be close, it's going to be parallel with Drescher Bridge Avenue, because like I said, Drescher Bridge Avenue is part of the levee system. So we'll have to work with the Corps in this case to make sure that we don't plant anything that's going to impact the structural integrity of the earthen levee there. This is a little bit better rendering of this area, so it's going to have some sort of fence and potentially some greenery. And these are a few examples, 2 examples of what kind of shallow rooting plants that we could potentially look at. Third option we could explore would be some sort of decorative metal fence. This is the same rendering as the chain link fence from far away. I doubt that you'd be able to tell much of a difference. But here are a couple examples of what a metal fence could look like. So with those in mind as potential fence options, I'd like to gather your ideas on these options. First, I'd like to start out with asking if anybody has any general comments or cart regarding these concepts. Has anything attracted or your attention or anything that would influence you positively or negatively? We'll put them on here. Once we have a couple on here, we're actually going to ask everybody to vote on them and see what's important to the group. So, yes, ma'am.
Oh, me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my property actually backs up to the woods.
Okay.
Okay.
On Brownsboro Road?
Yes, I would prefer no fencing.
Okay.
And plants on top of what you're doing, because it's like a wildlife preserve down there.
Yes, ma'am.
There's so many animals that live there. And I realize you're going to take quite a bit of woods out.
So no fencing will be an option. It's not an option yet, at least for this exercise. Does anybody have anything about chain link fencing or metal fencing that they would like to see, that they would like to voice to where we could talk about? Yes, ma'am.
Will you be able to use drought-tolerant plants around the perimeter? Because you're not going to be watering them.
We would not be watering them, any sort of maintenance of the plants, but let's definitely put that on there to make sure any plants would be potentially resistant to drought. Yes, ma'am.
I just wrote that whatever plants you plant should not be known to cause allergy irritation.
Okay.
Because one of those photographs looked like it had a lot of, I don't know what it was, but I could say, oops, I could feel people sneezing when they were
So if any plants were to be planted, they would be conscientious of allergy sufferers, and I'm in that boat, so we can work with that. Yes, sir.
The primary issue I see with chain link fence is additional maintenance, because you can't mow up next to it. You gotta run weed eaters on both sides. And to me, that's cost prohibitive.
Okay. So just the maintenance of a fence in
Yeah,
general.
I saw one picture with mulch and then plants.
Yeah.
So if a fence is coming in, that seems like that's the better option.
Okay.
At least have mulch on both sides.
Okay.
Because now there's no fence there at all.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I
Turn
just
back.
think the fence thing, that there is a lot of wildlife, and then you're gonna prevent them from moving, and those big fences, and it's
Yeah, we
too
have
restrictive,
wild,
I think.
we have wild turkey there.
You do,
I've
and
seen
I just
turkey.
think, you start putting up those fences,
Yeah. Fox, yeah.
Yeah, they have nowhere to go.
Yeah, deer.
I don't know how to word that.
I saw a turkey last year.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Why do we have a fence?
A fence would be to isolate the site to where people wouldn't be able to get down to the top of the basin. Well, I'll tell you what, we're getting ready to get to that question. So what I'll do is let's take the ones that we have, unless you have one, sir.
Well, with respect to fencing, the ornamental fencing, having just walked around the water plant, the walkway around there, that fencing looked similar. And if there's going to be any kind of fencing, I mean, I'm dead set against chain link.
Okay.
Then the ornamental fencing comes in its way.
Okay.
It looks very similar to that.
Okay. Okay, so we'll take these, we'll vote on these real quick. We're actually going to do the suitability of each one of these. So the polling is open. If you'd like to talk about which one of these items is most... I'll tell you what, let's...
Why not have a sports field? Instead of it's as big as a football field, why not open it to people who want to play sports?
Okay, well, how about this? We'll skip ahead a little bit. We won't vote on this. We'll skip ahead to So the basin itself is going to be an open grassed area. We can't plant trees or large shrubs on the basin top, but we can potentially landscape a little bit around the outside of where our project is going to be. There's still not going to be motorized access for the public once we get done. There's really not going to be any amenities to speak of down there. We're not talking about putting any restroom facilities down there for the public. MSD's control building, regardless of what we talk about tonight, we're going to make sure that the mechanical and electrical equipment that we install to operate this is secure. So we're not jeopardizing MSD's facility by anything that you say tonight. But I want to ask, now that we've gotten through that, whether you want a fence or not. How suitable is this? So this is what the site would potentially look like without a fence around it. So we'll still have some MSD access points at grade, but they'll still be secure. But there won't be a fence around the entirety. We have an opportunity to put some things on here about your opinions or concerns about not having a fence. These couple, yes, ma'am.
Will people walking on the roof of that structure damage the roof?
No, ma'am.
So then, like mining site restoration, and I've heard about the natural wildlife, will it just be a grass area, or will it be restored in terms of some habitat?
It will be a grassed area, so we can maintain that grass. Yes, sir. I don't think either one of those would go up here, but yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the double-edged sword is if you have the roof elevated, then you do not have all that additional mowing because square footage is the size of a football field. So when they mow I call it a dike, but you call it a levee. When they mow the levee now, that's a tremendous amount of mowing and allergens and dust that's kicked into the air. Because I live right in front of the basin on Delta. So if you go below ground, then you're adding additional mowing costs to the whole project and dust and allergens that are stirred up during that mowing process. So rooftop, not pleasant to look at, but no additional mowing and allergens.
And
grass up.
I don't want this to sound harsh, but we've moved forward with the design as below ground. So
that's set. Okay.
So that is set. So now we're just kind of talking about security and access to the grassed area that's going to be above the.
So I feel like if there is grass, access should be there.
Okay. And Ted will add free wildlife movement. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you're gonna have to mow it, where are you gonna go in to mow it? From Millwood Avenue?
We'd be accessing it from Melwood Avenue through Muncie Avenue. Yeah, thank you, Councilman. So there's an existing road there to a certain point. So we'll be able to access this with MSD vehicles, but it won't be open to the public still.
Another question, what about that big old thing you already got down there? That big concrete?
The big concrete thing that's down there, that's the overflow pipe that all this overflow goes through out to the river. So it's mostly buried in most of it, but it does stick out of the ground a little bit. That was constructed by the commissioners of sewerage a long time ago. We'll be tying into that at one point, but that's going to remain in place.
So is this actually going to catch all of the water when it floods, or is there still going to be water in the woods when it floods?
I'll answer that two different ways. When the river floods, there's still going to be water back there. When it rains very heavy, but the river's not flooding, the sewer overflows come. This project will grade that land a little bit to where it will drain more freely. But I don't believe that there was much combined sewage overflow back there before. It was mostly just rainwater that couldn't get out. So I'm gonna add something on here based on kind of what you said, but one of the good things about not having a fence in this location is that it's not going to catch debris if the river floods, which is sort of a maintenance point.
Yeah,
It was way up here in '97.
It absolutely was, and this area was actually wet this year too. So.
Well, that's the other thing. We have a huge mosquito problem in our neighborhood because of that swampy area. But I don't even believe in insecticide because then it all runs into the river.
So we will, at least in the area where we're going to be constructing this basin, we'll be grading that a little bit better because we'll have to mitigate for a couple wetlands in the area. So it will drain better and we'll provide an outlet in there because right now it's sort of a bowl. So there's only two options here. If anybody else would like to add one, otherwise we can vote on You can vote for both of these and tell us which are important to you. Or we don't have to score them. So we know these things are important. But the next question is where we'll give you an opportunity to... Okay. So you can vote for one or both of these options as things that are important to you as neighbors. So the one being what we talked about before is wildlife isn't going to be restricted based on a fence getting in their way.
Oh, they should figure out how to get around it.
And they could get around. This is, you know, we don't want to make them feel unwelcome. And then the fence, without having a fence here, we're not going to catch any debris from the actual river.
Or you're trying to keep the terrorists out?
It sort of depends on how you feel about people walking down there. I don't personally expect too much to happen down there. MSD isn't concerned about anybody getting in it and destroying our facility. So, okay. So these are almost equally important to the people who polled. So how suitable is a fence for this location? So very unsuitable means that you do not think that we install a fence. Very suitable means that you think that we should install a fence for either the reasons we've talked about or maybe something that you haven't wanted to voice so far. So we've got quite a few responses already. More than we have yet, so okay. So
No, gosh.
So two-thirds of the audience thinks that we should not install a fence. So we appreciate that. I have to jump ahead now. So our next steps, we're going to take the things we discussed tonight and the online polling that's going to be available. We're going to work forward in finalizing our design. We're going to advertise the project for construction before we meet next. We're going to schedule another meeting for everybody to come in, especially the people who are going to be around the constructed area. We'll show you the final design, and we'll sort of tell you what to expect during construction, because it should not impact anybody personally, but it will be some more traffic in your area that you will notice. Our goal... Yes, ma'am.
When you get through with all that construction, will you guarantee that the roadway, the surface of the road, is as good as what Bill Hollander just enabled to happen?
We do not want to leave Muncie Avenue because that's going to be probably our primary access point. We don't want to leave it in shambles. So,
And Drescher Bridge itself, that's one.
and Drescher Bridge, I don't anticipate. We'll have to work with the contractor. I think that slope is probably too steep for a contractor to bring any heavy equipment down. So I don't expect any issues with Drescher Bridge Avenue. Our goal is to have the project complete by the fall of 2018. In order to get any personalized updates from MSD about this project in particular, if you'd like to be put on the email list for this project, send an email mentioning this project to our email address at the bottom, comments, iowap@msdlouky.org. So our schedule for this, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I may be the only person here whose property backs up to the woods. And exactly how much of the woods are you talking about taking out? It's like a big chunk.
The question was how much of the woods we're talking about taking out. It will be a big chunk. The pipe that's sticking out of the ground that you talked about, we shouldn't be clearing anything in your side of that pipe.
So it's going to be on the other side?
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to take the trees out by the cliff? Pretty much all of it?
I'm going to say yes, just so you aren't upset with me if it happens.
And another thing, when you take those trees out, I can already hear fishers when they have music. I mean, it's just like boom, boom, boom. So when you take the trees out, it's going to be even loud. More boom, boom, boom.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But
So they sort of filter the noise.
yeah, most of those trees that we're going to be disturbing are going to be low, so it might not be taking anything that would sound as a buffer, but it is a potential.
There's some big trees, old trees.
As far as our schedule for this project, like I said, we hope to have the project design complete at the end of this year. Have our public meeting that I just discussed next spring after we advertise the project for construction. Start it next summer in 2016, and I said our goal was to be complete by fall of 2018. We have a commitment to have the project complete by December 31st of 18. So now, if you have any additional comments that you would like to say that we hadn't talked about already, if you have a comment card, if you could write it down and raise your hand with it, and we'll collect it. The reason for that is we just like I can read them out loud to make sure that they get on record. If anybody's writing a comment card, I'll move forward just to fill some blank space. But I'd like to remind everybody that if they see a combined sewer overflow or a sanitary sewer overflow, call MSD. Don't go try to remedy it yourself. It is a public health issue. If you call MSD, we'll go out there and try to make sure nobody else gets in it and clean up. Once again, if you know anybody who wasn't able to come, you can either direct them to the Project Win website or just to this URL itself, but there's a link on the Project Win website. We'll be able to incorporate the things that we discussed tonight into that so more people can vote on the things that were important to you as well. Obviously, MSD is we strive to continuously improve on our public outreach. So one last time using your clickers, we'd like to ask how satisfied you were with this type of process where you have some input on some options that we present to you. So you can go ahead and press your button as far as 1, very unsatisfied, or 9, which I would like you all to say is very satisfied with this process. We do like constructive criticism, so if there's anything that we can improve on, we'd like to address that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what I said.
So whichever the last one you press is the one that it'll read. So if you pressed 1 is very unsatisfied, and I just happened to sway your vote just now, and you're very satisfied, then we can press 9, or anywhere in between.
It's a high number. If you don't like it, it's a low.
Yeah. Okay, so we have almost all of our responses in. Okay, so generally more people are satisfied with this. We will still try to improve on some of this. If you have something in particular that you are unsatisfied with, you can also email the comments IOAP at msdluky.org with some constructive criticism, and we would like to use that to improve. Thank you for your time and coming. We really appreciate the input that you guys provide. If anybody has a comment card they'd like me to address while I'm here, raise your hand, and one of our esteemed personnel will grab that for me.
Who came up with tiny URL?
Who came up with tiny URL? I think it's just a generic way to shrink the... Honestly, I don't really know. I just know that Ted was able to get Clifton Basin number 3 on there, so that's what we like to keep in the forefront. So the one comment that I received, is there a program for reporting downspouts into drain pipe at house foundation, pipes that enter the sewer? Depending on the area, downspouts and sump pumps that are connected to the sewer, they're illicit connections, and they contribute to overflows in the area. I don't know of a way that we can report other people, but if you know anybody who is willing to disconnect that, we have a program that we will come out and help you disconnect those and even pay you in certain cases to make those disconnections, make it worthwhile, obviously. And on your way out, Cheryl has some information about that. If you have a brother or sister or uncle that you want to strong arm into disconnecting their downspouts, then please take this information and put it in their Christmas stocking or something. Yes, sir.
The primary reason I asked that question is I was down in Old Lowell the other day with a friend who's in a huge rental property. Mm-hmm. And that property, which is obvious, could be old, somebody out of town or another, but it's a huge building, had 3 downspouts entering the sewer. Okay. So it's not a private individual. That's what I'm thinking. Is there a venue for me to report this particular building?
Well, the question is about a large residential apartment complex that's connected to the downspouts connected to sewer. If you don't mind, I'll just get with you and see if maybe they've even submitted any information themselves. I can get the address from you, and maybe we can reach out to them and ask. So,
if we could exchange emails or something, because I don't know the exact address of the building.
Yes, sir, I can definitely do that. So, another comment that we got is, what other neighborhoods will have this type of experiment? These projects aren't experiments. These are proven solutions to help with with capturing overflow and then treating that overflow. So we're cleaning up our creeks and streams. These types of facilities are in other parts of the country. Combined sewers were built as a public health initiative at one time. Obviously, we know better now, so we're trying to clean those up. We're not the first city. We're definitely not going to be the last city with a consent decree to do this type of work. MSD has identified ways to do this this basin is a very large basin, and we can't do this with green infrastructure, but in other parts of the county, we've been able to use green infrastructure to pull stormwater out of the system to eliminate the need for a basin. So there are a dozen of these type of basins, along with some green infrastructure projects that MSD has in our community, along with other initiatives that we have to reduce the inflow and infiltration into our sewer pipes. And like I said, this is a pretty widespread type of solution to our problem. So.
Okay, I want to ask a question. So this is just going to be grass. It's going to be big and flat. Is that what you're saying? Or maybe a little bit. So don't you think that that's going to attract kids down there? Because it's pretty isolated. If it's back there and there's a bridge, there's a cliff. On my side, it goes up pretty steep. So aren't you worried about, drug addicts and kids down there? I don't want to.
So there were two questions. One is just make sure this is going to be below ground grass and flat. Yes, we'll might not be perfectly level, but we're gonna smooth out the surface, grade it to drain to where there's not ponding water back there. But yeah, it's going to be, like I said, we're going to have some concrete access points at the ground level, but 95% of it is going to be grass back there. And MSD will be responsible for maintaining it. This is the second question.
There were people living down there for a couple of years in this big 8-hour tent. I mean, they were, homeless people, and they actually lived there.
So the second question is about kids or potentially homeless population getting down here. That would be one potential reason to install a fence, but even you said that you don't want a fence, so.
Because you're not just going to take out and have a fence all the way up to trees and everything. You're going to have a road, so that's not going to help. The fence would really be, or it would hinder the animals that live there. The deer would try to jump over and probably kill it themselves, because it's, and I think everybody's the same. The animals have been there forever. We moved in on them. They didn't move in on us.
Yes, ma'am.
Although my house is 130 years old.
If there's anything that you think of on your way out of here, you're more than welcome to email.
Well, they can give you plant some kind of grass or, that gets rather high. You could have your road access, but
we can look into planting some plants and things, but it's not, obviously, we won't have to screen a chain link fence or a other fence based on your comments. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what we talked about tonight, kind of move forward, make some decisions on what we want to do as MSD in our facility. Obviously, we want your input, so we're going to take this. If anything comes to mind and you think about something on your way home tonight, feel free to email us. The email address comments@msdlouky.org. Reference this part of town at least, and we can try to incorporate that. You're more than welcome to take the online survey yourself if you really want to voice your opinion. I think it probably has a comments box. Yes, ma'am.
It did flood really bad.
It flooded this year, and like the gentleman said, it was worse in '97. But
so when the water went down, did you all spray?
That water wasn't sewage water, so we didn't spray anything back there to clean up. We didn't do any sort of disinfection. That's not one of the points where our combined sewer overflows discharge. But it is Ohio River water, which is sometimes dirty, but it wasn't in.
Well, when I talked to someone on the phone, they said it was sewage water, and they were going to pump it through the plant. So therefore, there was all that sewage water behind me. But I don't want them spraying anything. I don't care.
We haven't sprayed anything back there. I don't think we have an initiative to spray anything back there if there were sewage water. But this facility, our basin project, is really going to alleviate the overflows from happening. So it's a good solution to this. So.
When it floods back there, you'll just have to go back there and clean it all up and So you have access in?
Yeah, so if the Ohio River floods and it deposits some little bit of dirt on top of something we have to get access to, we're going to get access to it. So
So how much flood would you have? Enough to put the gates up? To flood it back there? Or just a little bit of, rain? River gets up a little and it's flooded?
If you're familiar with the area and talk about the flooding, obviously you live in the area. It's going to be about when Melwood Avenue overtops is when water gets back there. So that's about the elevation. That's about as frequently. So.
Yeah, it doesn't usually get that high as it did this time. So I figured someone must have pumped water.
We did not pump water back there.
I don't know how it got that high. Melwood Avenue wasn't flooded.
It can get back there through some pipes that are underground, but
I lived there 35 years. I know
we also had some really heavy rains. But if anybody has anything they'd like to talk about offline, obviously you can approach me after this. You can email comments IOP if anything comes up. Thank you all for coming, and I'll let you guys go now. So, yeah, and if you can give Cheryl at the door, give her your clickers on your way out, we would very much appreciate that. So, thank you very much.